As part of the Federal Project Management series, this module is an introduction to operational analysis. Your learning objectives for operational analysis will be just to generally understand what it is, and it's a tool in the toolkit for managing certain types of investments in the federal government. I'll cover the mandates and regulations that require operational analysis, ultimately what those requirements are and the purpose of it, how to engage in effective monitoring of an investment, who performs an operational analysis, what are some tools and techniques, and possibly some checklists and recommendations. My name is Janelle Moore. I will be your course instructor. I am the CEO of Zen Federal, which used to be a larger company, but in 2019, I completed an M&A and I sold off most of my company assets, as well as a nonprofit that I had developed and run, a wonderful organization called the Federal CPIC Forum, which specialized in policy, portfolio management, as well as CPIC, which is capital planning and investment control. I retired from that after 13 years of running it as an executive director. I also have about 25 years of experience in lifecycle solutions, management consulting, professional services, all to the federal government. The federal government contracting work has predominantly been my career. I have 3 masters, one in Chief Information Officer Studies from National Defense University. I also have a master's in Information Assurance, which is now more frequently called cybersecurity. And my master's of science in information management is from Syracuse University. My bachelor's is in philosophy and business administration from East Carolina University. Go Pirates! And I also have certifications, the CJIT, which is Certified in Governance Enterprise IT, Capital Planning Professional Instructor, and Governance Risk Compliance IT Certified. So that body of all those degrees and all those certifications exceed the highest standards of government requirements for certain types of acquisition, program management, and capital planning types of work. There are 2 certifications that are most frequently used for the government. One is the Federal Acquisition Certification, and the other is the Defense Authorization Workforce Improvement Act Certification. So that's the FAC or the DAWIA. They have 3 levels of those certifications, level 1, level 2, and level 3. The other very common certification is the Project Management Professional from the Project Management Institute, which is really only like a level 1 of the federal PM requirements that are within the scope of the FAC or the DAWIA certifications. The PMP, or the PMBOK rather, that Project Management Body of Knowledge, is actually a subset of the studies of my Master's of Science in Information Management and my NDU courses. So technically, I have way more experience than a senior PMP or a FAC or DAWIA professional. So that means that I am robustly qualified to teach you this content, to distill it down into the appropriate meaty bits, and for you to have some really relevant takeaways for your continuing professional education in this area. In terms of business cases and budget proposals for the government, I've done congressional business, congressional budget justifications, CBJs. I've worked on the president's budget requests. I've worked on financial passbacks, where the Office of Management and Budget, as part of the Executive Office of the President of the United States, sends those budget requests back for more management information or artifacts. I have not only developed those artifacts for clients, but I have taught different agencies and departments how to do those artifacts in facilitated sessions and workshops and trainings. I have done the tactical work in terms of delivery for clients. I have done the front end requirements and assisted with source selection. I have worked as an intermediary in public and private partnership discussions. So everything having to do with capital planning and governance and the business cases and how that flows up through the executive and legislative branches and back down through the C-suite of the IT shops, the CXOs, the CFOs, the CIOs, and into those program level and project level teams. I've done it both ways, both directions. So I can talk to it and I can also do it. And that makes me more popular as an instructor of this content, because it's one thing to talk the talk, but it's another thing to actually get into the agencies and to the programs and the directorates and show folks how to do this work and to do it right. So hopefully that information will be useful and will give you context for making sure that you have someone telling you how to do this that knows how to do it themselves. Office of Management and Budget, through their OMB circulars and capital programming guide, define policy for steady state investments, and it is OMB and their interpretation of the laws and guidance that mandate that requirement. It requires use of performance to measure areas in terms of strategic, business, financial, and system performance, as well as user satisfaction. It requires agencies to perform monthly reporting if areas are considered high risk or are in trouble. Otherwise, it can be performed annually. The A11 is a circular that's released by Office of Management and Budget and updated annually that requires the operational analysis to be performed on investments called steady state. These are investments that are traditionally in operations and maintenance that are outside the acquisition phase and are currently in the management in use phase if you follow the capital programming guide. I have recorded separate modules on the OMB Circular A11 and the 3 phases of capital programming. It would be helpful for you to take those courses and review those to get a deeper understanding of those mandates. The operational analysis, as defined by OMB, is that method of examining the ongoing performance of an operating asset or investment. It's measuring that performance against an established set of cost, schedule, and performance goals. Operations are a critical area of improved effectiveness and productivity. They have the greatest net measurable benefit in terms of cost, performance, and mission accomplishment. There are 4 core areas that have not changed in the 20 years that I've been working on some of this. And those 4 core areas of evaluation are strategic and business objectives, those tie to like a strategic plan, financial goals that tie to your budget and your performance metrics, your system performance goals of how well that system or IT investment is operating for you and your program, and how well your customers and users rate you in terms of meeting their needs. An operational analysis is considered an evaluation process. It formally assesses, as an inherently governmental function, how well that investment or system or project is meeting those strategic and business objectives I mentioned before, is meeting financial goals, meets customer needs, achieves those system performance goals, and how well it performs in terms of the baseline for cost, schedule, and performance. It's less structured and less rigorous than how we use earned value management to track variances for other types of investments that have software development, modernization, or enhancements. But it does really trigger our considerations of how an investment's objectives are being met or could be better met, how we can reduce costs or achieve greater efficiencies, where we can embed or introduce innovation. And we have to look at the collection of performance data to make sure that we're continuing to do it in a way that makes sense. Operational analysis can be something that takes an hour or 2, or it can be much more rigorous than that. I've personally been able to perform OAs on systems and programs based on interviews and conducting questions and facilitating question and answer phases. We've been able to recommend programs and investments for modernization, and we've been able to recommend other things to be terminated that were no longer deemed useful when we could reallocate those resources to something else. I have done portfolio-wide OAs and facilitated those for federal staffs. It's not really a heavy lift. It's more coordinating and making sure people are prepared for the questions we're going to ask. And usually, if you've never done an OA, people can be a little, stressed and not really sure what to anticipate, but you can make the process relatively painless when you focus on those 4 areas and let people know in advance what you're going to be asking and looking for and what kinds of goals really need to sort of be evaluated or maybe even be changed. So you're going to want to look at your performance. You're going to want to look at your established baseline or your as is. You're going to want to look at your target state or your to be. Is everything running the way that it should? Is it supporting customers and stakeholders? Is it well managed or is it in trouble? Does it need to be paused? Do you need to maybe look at doing things differently? Is it time to look at alternatives again? And maybe look at doing something slightly differently than we've done in the past based on changes in our scope or changes in the direction that our bosses are going. A lot of different things can trigger those discussions. The outputs of an operational process are really recommendations. How do we continue to use these resources? Do we continue using these resources the same way, or do we need a different approach? An operational analysis needs to be performed at least annually for any kind of investment that is considered in operations and maintenance or in mixed life cycle, where some component of the investment is in operations and maintenance and other components may be in like development, modernization, or enhancements. You would start doing an operational analysis annually 6 to 18 months after a post-implementation review, where you've built or acquired something new and rolled it out and put it into service. Usually once a year is enough, unless you're looking at something that's in trouble and has been engaging in corrective action or needs corrective action, and then you may need to do it more frequently. So most agencies or departments have their own operational analysis guide, and the guides have some pretty common contents that are standard across government. And I've provided you a screenshot so that you can take a moment to look at all of these sort of common core elements of an OA. You're welcome to pull your agency or department's OA guide and check against these things to see if it's all there or if anything's missing. If anything's missing, a good question is why, and do you need to have someone update that OA guide? Usually you will find the mandate that prescribes operational analysis in the Capital Programming Guide, as well as the OMB Circular A11 Part 7. You may also want to look at Part 6 that focuses on performance for the business case reports. Some people refer to those reports still as OMB 300s, but they're really just business case reports, and the appropriate section for IT investments has been updated to Section 55. If you're using operational analysis effectively to monitor your steady state investments, one of the first ways that you're going to look at monitoring cost and schedule is with the evidence of a work breakdown structure. Do you have a work breakdown structure? Do your work breakdown structure packages align with your cost packages and your schedule? If there's no WBS, as my instructor once told me, it's just BS. Are you able to predict even a partial point variance or deviation from your cost and schedule? Remember FASA, Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act of 1994, requires us to maintain 90% of our baseline. If we're more than 10% deviated from cost or schedule, we would need to pause and regroup or take a corrective action plan approach. Does the governance body that monitors our governance practices have an approved baseline for our use? You can't re-baseline if you don't have an approved baseline through your governance body, your CIO, your CFO, and OMB to start with. Are you regularly monitoring your alternatives to ensure that the steady state investment is a better management idea than doing it some other way? Is running an investment in operations and maintenance the best, most cost-effective, or mission essential way to leverage the agency level and department level inventory of IT assets? When I was doing some OAs on the CDC portfolio in Atlanta, one of the things that we discovered was that a lot of the projects that had been required for many years, decades even, within that portfolio were things that were mandated by Congress in like the 1950s and 1960s. And we were not even able to ascertain if there were stakeholders using the data or information that was produced from, half a century old congressional mandate. So we were able to make recommendations to end quite a few projects and then reallocate those resources and funds to more appropriate things that aligned with the strategic plan, using the operational analysis to effectively terminate projects that we could demonstrate were not leveraging the mission. They were leveraging a mission from a long time ago that was no longer relevant. So this can definitely be an effective tool in the toolkit for taking your investment in the direction that it appropriately needs to go. So not surprisingly, OMB wants to see how we're performing through the operational analysis in terms of cost and schedule. And performance is basically the variances or the metrics for which the cost and schedule milestones have been established. So we're going to be measuring against an established approved baseline. That baseline is usually approved by OMB, the CIO, sometimes the CFO, depending on FEDucational and how it's used in an agency or department. And there's also the approval that's required through a governing body. So your baseline, if it has not been approved at the governance level, is probably not good enough. It is required for anything that has a life cycle cost of more than $1 million. And it's basically got to show that it's properly operating and maintaining the asset to maximize its useful life. Some examples of other courses that I've completed that we're getting ready to launch. I provide instructions for how to navigate the federal government business cases. And I most recently obtained and used the FY22 guidance that OMB released in 2020. Since, everything has to have a useful life of 2 years or more. This is the most current guidance as of the time of this recording. I anticipate that every May, the new guidance continues to come out. So I will be amending those business case instructions annually as time permits. I've also recorded a session on Introduction to Federal Portfolio Management and Portfolio Stat for those folks that are leveling up to managing portfolios of investments. I have provided another course like this on project management that dives into the tech stat process and the Federal IT Acquisition Reform Act requirements for that tech stat. And then I've created a mini module for how to get a job in CPIC. And it's not just CPIC. That works for trying to get into the government as an IT specialist or a business analyst or a project manager. That particular module is really useful for just coming up to speed and learning how to be competitive for those jobs. If you're looking for work and you would like to come into the federal government, or you're having trouble sort of leveling up and making yourself competitive for these federal government and contractor jobs, you're welcome to make a request via email to book some time with me for a review of your resume to have a mentoring or counseling session. We charge an hourly fee for my time for that, but I'm happy to sit down with you, review what you have, what you know, and then make some recommendations. I would encourage you to send your resume to our fit sourcing team at the appropriate email, recruiting@fitsourcing.org, as well as any references, cover letter, any clearance details you have, your educational background, any certificates of completion like these types of little webinars and learning opportunities that you're getting, and any salary details or salary history that you have. I know a lot of people that work in this field. I was the executive director of the CPIC Forum for 13 years. I was almost constantly helping to refer people into positions for interviews. I know a lot of CEOs and presidents of companies around the Washington Beltway and nationwide. I know a lot of recruiters. I know a lot of folks in this industry. And if you don't know how to network, engaging with us, maybe we can help you get there through Zen Federal or Fit Sourcing. You're welcome to follow me on LinkedIn as we put out new training, new information. I often share jobs and internships that are shared with me. Make sure you keep track of your training certificates of completion. And in LinkedIn, you can maintain a summary of your courses up to 50. And recruiters and people that are vetting you for positions really like to see all those courses that you've taken that are relevant to your area of growing expertise. Again, here is my contact information. If you need to reach me or follow us, we love positive reviews of our training. If you don't like something, email me and let me fix it before you just complain, because I'm learning how to do this as a new platform. I have been an instructor-led course instructor for many years, but this is a little bit of a different platform for me. So I'm open to constructive criticism. I welcome your comments, and we love those positive reviews, and we need those positive reviews to stay successful. So feel free to reach out to my team at Zen Federal. There's my personal email, j@zenfederal.com. And there's our LinkedIn profile for Zen Federal and me. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for participating in our learning activity today.